Hi everyone, thanks for being here and welcome to this conversation on responsible technology in practice. My name is Paula. I'm an engineer who is interested in how we can create and use technology in ways that serve people and the society and the environment better. That's why I created Pau&Company. It is a tech consultancy where we help organizations to improve their systems so they are safer, more efficient and easier to maintain. At Pau&Company, we analyze digital systems and AI systems, identify risks related with privacy, cybersecurity, and sustainability, and help teams implement responsible technology principles in practice. And today's event is about this, about what responsible technology means for you. We have people joining us from different parts of the world with different backgrounds and areas of expertise. This is a co-creation space in which we would like to explore how different people and organizations understand these challenges, what decisions they need to make, what barriers they face when they are trying to implement more responsible approaches. So before we start, I want to explain a bit how today will work. The session has two parts. The first part of this conversation is with Seher Shafiq from Mozilla Foundation, which will be recorded and shared afterwards. We will then move to a second part that is a participatory discussion with the attendees. This second part will not be recorded as we want to create a space where people can contribute openly. Those of you who want to remain anonymous can switch off your camera and use a different name so you cannot be identified, but it won't be recorded anyway. So this event is taking place because it's a follow-up session of a workshop that I run in the last Mozilla Festival in 2025. And the session was called "What Does Your Tech Stack Say About You?" And it was a live security and autonomy diagnostic for organizations. During that session, during that festival, I met Seher Shafiq, who is the global community lead at Mozilla Foundation. And she was part of the team who was supporting us during the festival and before the festival. And I, after the festival, I thought it would be valuable to continue the conversation and explore how responsible technology can be understood and implemented in practice, especially through the experiences of communities working on these challenges in different parts of the world. So I'm very happy that Seher has joined us today. Seher, thanks for being here. I'd like to start by asking you about your experience working with Mozilla communities around the world. So can you tell us what are the main questions and challenges that communities bring up when thinking about technology?
Yes, great question. Yes. Okay, so we work with a global audience, like across all continents, and I've been in this role for 3.5 years now and worked on the co-design of, I think, 6 festivals, maybe more than that. And it is very interesting to see the differences in priorities and challenges being faced by people in different continents. So, for example, not even continents, but regions. For example, across Africa and especially in East Africa, there is a lot of priority given to conversations around labor rights and the human aspect of AI. So, content moderation, data labeling, all of those types of jobs being outsourced largely to East Africa, like mostly Kenya. There are conversations across Africa around how the West and Silicon Valley lead discussions around the development of AI and decisions, and that's where the power is kind of held. And so, like specifically in Africa, which traditionally has, in every technological revolution, has been kind of taken advantage of and exploited. A lot of those conversations are coming back, given there is such a difference in control and decision making with the AI wave. When it comes to North America, it's largely the US that dominates the conversation, and there's a lot of conversation around policy. And likewise in Europe, because Europe, with the AI Act, has been a leader in AI legislation, and a lot of other jurisdictions are following what they've done. A lot of the conversations and challenges that people in Europe speak about are from that policy and legislation point of view. So very disconnected from things like data labeling and outsourcing of cheap labor and the ethical concerns around that. In Europe and the US, like when we're talking about policy, it's often about things like consumer protection rights and privacy and security is another big one. And like even online, like on LinkedIn, if you search up ethical tech or digital rights, because the West does tend to dominate those conversations, you'll see an overrepresentation of conversations about privacy and security and less about things like labor rights and AI. The other region that stands out that has a very distinct perspective is the Middle East, or SWANA region, some people like to call it now. And especially in the last 3 years, there is a really dominant conversation about the use of AI in military, specifically around what's happened in Palestine and how military systems have been used to target and kill Palestinians. I am noticing over the last two festivals that there's an increase of session proposals about that topic. Even when I go to other conferences, the folks who are in that region, when they talk about digital rights and ethical AI, like that is something that distinctly is a challenge or a priority for people in that region, which is, again, like just very different from other regions that we've mentioned. So yeah, that's just kind of scratching the surface, but those are some of the really big differences across different communities that I've noticed.
Yeah, this is really interesting how the West is dominated by these issues that some of them are the areas in which Pau&Company specialize, like privacy and cybersecurity, and how is treated the development of technology is treated differently depending on where you are geographically. I wanted to ask you as well if you see other differences, not only geographically, but also in terms of, like, for example, like everything that has to do with race, with ethnic group, with gender, with religion, and other aspects as well. Like, for example, with access to resources, you have mentioned this imbalance in power that is reflected as well in how technology is being developed and how critical we are with different aspects of technology. I don't know if you see in these communities, if you see differences in within the same geographical area, if you see differences between different social groups.
Yeah, so for your first question, there is a different part, like, yeah, I mean, different lived experiences have different lenses. So for sure, like people who are focusing on race or gender, like they're thinking about things in a very different way. Like they're talking about bias in algorithms and data sets not being unbiased or reflective of everyone. Even like with indigenous communities and underrepresented languages, like that's a whole other discussion, a really big area that people are doing a lot of work in. And every Mozilla festival, we have lots of examples of people working on that specifically. And then in terms of resourcing, yeah, I mean, a lot of the funding is concentrated in the West. There's less opportunities. I keep talking about Africa because we did two events in East Africa that were intended. We did two local Mozilla Festival, smaller events in East Africa that were targeted towards all of Africa. So I like that's the example that I just have like the most experience in, and it comes up the most for me. But yeah, there's just less funding opportunities in that region as compared to the US, for example. So yeah, that's a short answer to your question.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to connect these two worlds and how what we are demanding as consumers or what we would like to have as consumers, and also what they are at the other part of this evolution, no? How we want to call it, how to connect these demands for having the best outcome possible. I have another question. Well, you already touched you already talked about the Mozilla Festival and the different tracks, But I mentioned the cybersecurity track, but I think the tracks are a bit different this year because of this wilding theme. And I don't know if
Yeah.
if you can talk a bit about the different tracks.
Yeah, I can also put, so I'll talk about them and I will also put the link in the chat as well if people want to um, read up on them and also learn about attending the festival. I think early bird tickets are still on sale. I forget when it won't be early bird anymore, but you have the website there. So yeah, the umbrella theme, like I said, is wilding, and under that we have several different tracks. Four of them are curated through the global Mozilla community. So I run a program where we recruit different people in the digital rights space, and they tell us like how we should frame the sub themes of the festival. So four of the themes are developed through that stream of work, and then the rest are developed through internal Mozilla priorities. So the first one is called Wilding Advocacy. So looking at how traditional advocacy isn't working anymore, and power concentrating with a few while at the expense of others. And so looking at practical solutions of how we can kind of move to the next stage of advocacy given where, like the moment that we're at right now. Wilding Knowledge is the track that is about how, like, examples of communities developing alternative technologies because of what they are experiencing right now. So looking at a lot of very like local accessible approaches that challenge, the traditional one size fits all approach. The next one is Wilding Systems. So that's kind of the governance track. So looking at governance models, open source examples, holding platforms accountable, environmental impact of digital infrastructure, so things like data centers. Next is wilding with nature. So that one is the most similar to the concept of wilding, but kind of applying principles from nature and applying them to the tech space and seeing what can we create if we look at examples of how nature is interconnected and how nature functions and what would that look like. It's a little bit abstract, but that's what makes for really cool sessions in that track. And then we have another one for youth, so people age 13 to 17 to learn about ethical tech and digital rights. We have one for creativity, so that's going to be art installations that touch on all of the themes that we're talking about right now. And then last but not least, we have two more, so one for founders and startup founders, and then one that's specifically for developers working on open source. So that's the list of festival sub themes.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to add to this that is not only we'll go to the questions in a bit. So it's not only when you go to the Mozilla Festival, it's not only what you bring, but it's also all this amazing community and having all these conversations. So these tracks that you have mentioned, they are not isolated between them, but they are connected, and there are people with similar interest in each one of the tracks, and it's really interesting to see how different projects can be connected. Someone asked something in the chat. Really said, I don't know if you can see it, Seher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, could you talk about the way Mozilla was building the use of AI in the Firefox browser without providing any way of removing it? I can't talk about that because I don't work for the corporation. I work for Mozilla Foundation. So I'm not involved in the Firefox browser at all. We collaborate with that team to have them present at the festival, but I just am not, like, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just not at all involved in that. Sorry.
well, an idea that is quite extended, that is that something has to be is something that I have found quite a lot during these years, that is to try to find an alternative that is optimal, that is perfect, and I think this is not possible. So all alternatives, all tools, or all like proposals, they have trade-offs. So that they have more than trade-offs, like constraints. That they have limitations, and it's really interesting. It's something that we can learn from as well. Finding like how different different organizations or different groups approach different problems and what are the solutions that they provide and what are the ethical limitations of this. So this is something quite interesting. So thank you for bringing it up. Well, so yeah, thank you very much, Seher, for answering these questions.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope that the rest of the session goes really well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
Okay, take care.
thank you. Bye. Well, I hope you found this conversation as interesting as I have. One of the reflections that emerged from this discussion is that different communities experience technology in different ways, and responsible technology cannot be defined from one single perspective, but it requires like understanding different realities and different contexts and finding ways for organizations to make better decisions that take these differences into account. So at this point, we're going to stop recording and move into the participatory part of the session, where we will continue exploring these questions together. The materials created during this discussion, will be available in the comments below. And well, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you again, Seher, for sharing your experience working with Mozilla communities with us. Bye.